Welcome to today's Fridays in the Lab. Today I want to talk about a question that I get from a lot of our customers. Oftentimes they'll ask me, Margot, what do you think is the best personality test we should give all of our candidates before we figure out who to hire for the job? And my answer is always the same. You cannot predict success with a personality test. Yes, it's a great way to find out a candidate's work priorities, how they're going to act in the workplace, and who they'll like working with the best, but it really isn't going to tell you if they're going to perform well in their job or not. There are a lot of tools you can use to figure out how your candidate is going to perform on the job. There are skills tests, behavioral assessments, there are reference checks, background checks, cognitive tests, problem-solving tests, a million different kinds of tests that you can use, and I know a lot of different companies are committed to the ones that they're already using, but research actually shows that structured interviews, yes, you heard me, structured interviews are the best way to predict success on the job. In fact, in a study that was done across multiple companies and across multiple different tests, they found that structured interviews were actually the #1 most accurate way of predicting success on the job. And if you think about it, let's say you test your candidate, you give them 15 different skills tests and a slew of different assessments. They're going to come in your office and you're still going to want to talk to the person, and there's a reason for that. There are certain things that you can't quantify from a written test. This graph shows the average validity or accuracy of the most common tools used to predict success on the job. If your tool isn't valid, that means it's either not really measuring what you set out to uncover, or you just can't say for certain whether it'll tell you who's qualified versus who's not. Here you'll notice that structured interviews are usually the best way to accurately gauge whether someone will be successful in your specific job. They fall a close second to cognitive ability tests, which can often lead to legal trouble if you're not careful. You'll also notice that unstructured interviews, the ones most companies do, aren't even on the page. That's because they yield almost zero validity. While structured interviews are really one of the best ways to predict success on the job, a lot of companies think they're doing structured interviews and they're really not. They're just doing interviews where they have a few questions that they want to ask the candidate, and they tend to ask a version of those every single time a candidate comes in. Really, the only way to make sure that you're basically able to compare apples to apples is if you write out interview questions before the interview, make sure that they're interview questions that relate to success on the job, and that means figuring out what it's going to take in order to be successful on your job, and then writing out even more specifically what responses you're looking for so that you can gauge whether or not a candidate is saying something, that touches the heart, or if they're saying something that's actually an answer that you're really looking for. Most companies really don't do it that way, but we've found that you can get actually twice as accurate. So you're increasing your accuracy by about 200% if you create that kind of structure around your interview process. So best practice, interview your candidate, give them the tests that are your favorites, and then once you've actually decided to hire the candidate, give them a personality test so you know how to best manage them. And this concludes today's Fridays in the Lab. See you next week.